Netflix, Peacock, Amazon Prime, Disney+, streaming media services change not only people's viewing habits, but also change the dynamics facing WCTV. Content is tailored to specific viewer interests, which, for the viewer, is a good thing. It allows people to cut the cord and eliminate programming they neither watch or need. An unforeseen consequence is that it impacts WCTV in a very challenging and costly way.
WCTV is funded almost entirely by a percentage of cable companies' revenues, based off the amount of cable subscribers we have in Wilmington. In short, less cable subscribers equals less revenue for WCTV. If you utilize any of WCTV's resources by creating your own program or watching local meetings and sports online, and you are not a cable subscriber, there is a way to help. I hope you will consider making a donation so that we can continue delivering these programs and more to you. For those of you who have made a donation, I thank you. We do receive these and we are very appreciative.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for coming tonight. Apologies for the delay and late start. We'll start with roll call. I'm Lilia Maselli. Start with Joe Marie.
Garrett.
Joe Maria Mahoney.
Greg Bendel.
Kevin Kyra.
Okay. The board is reconvening from an executive session for the purpose of discussing collective bargaining strategy with respect to the International Association of Firefighters Local 1370 and American Federation of State, County, Municipal Employees Local 1703, Unit 1, in accordance with Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A3, as an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the negotiation position of the town, as so determined by the chair. We could all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with justice for all. All right. Okay, we're going to start with the transmitting of Treasury warrant. 46, 46A, 46B, 46C, 47, and 47A.
Second.
So move. Roll call? Roll call on that for approval? Right?
Yes.
Okay, so moved.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, we have the approval of minutes from March 8th, 2021 and March 22nd, 2021. Can I have a motion to authorize the meeting minutes from March 8th, 2021?
Motion to accept. Second.
Mr. DePalma, Mr. Bendel, all. Mr. Kyra, yeah.
Yep.
So moved. And the motion to authorize the minutes of March 22nd, 2020. Do you have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, all in favor? So moved. Next, we'll move on to appointments. First up is Shelley Newhouse, Health Director. She's going to give us a COVID update and changes in protocol.
Hi, everyone.
Hi, Shelley. Thanks for coming.
Sure. I'll go over some numbers first. We're really looking good. We have 9 active cases in town, which is nice. It's been our lowest in, I don't even remember how long. We got about 25 to 30 in quarantine, and things are going really well with respect to positive cases. We have about 50% of the total population has been vaccinated in Wilmington, so we're moving in the right direction. We have 67% of those of the population has at least had 1 dose. So that's nice. So in a few more weeks, we should still see our numbers keep rising. So there's plenty of opportunity for people out there to get vaccinated. I encourage everyone ages 12 and up to get vaccinated. There's really you can go to walk-ins now. Leahy Clinic is offering walk-ins, CVS right here in Wilmington, at the Target. So there's plenty of places to get vaccinated, and we're just keep on encouraging people. So we'll see our vaccination rates go up, which will keep everything, we'll keep going in the right direction, which will be nice. This weekend marks a pretty big change in a lot of the COVID restrictions. On the 29th, all restrictions will be lifted. So it's really, with a few exceptions thrown in there, it's really going to be like business pre-COVID, which will be really nice. The mask restriction will be lifted except for those in K through 12. They indoor school settings, you still would have to wear a mask. That means staff and students. So, and that'll be through the end of the school year. If you're outdoors, they don't have to wear masks. Other exceptions to the mask rule are if you're in a healthcare setting, you still have to wear a mask. If you're taking any sort of public transit, you still have to wear a mask, and that would be like a ride share or a public bus. If you're in an airport, on an airline, unless they change their own rules, you'd still have to wear a mask. Congregate care settings, you would still have to wear a mask. So there's a couple of exceptions to the mask rule, but on May 29th, the mask rule gets lifted. So if there's any businesses or in town that want to still keep that mask order in effect, you know, I fully support them. They can do that. That would be up to them if they wanted to do that, and they can do that. And I would say that anyone that is uncomfortable or is just not ready yet, you know, it's understandable, then keep wearing your mask. And it's also a recommendation that if you aren't vaccinated, you should still continue to wear a mask. That's not an order, it's just an advisory that really, because you're just protecting yourself. If you're not vaccinated, you should really still consider wearing a mask. It's important to keep, you know, our numbers going in the right direction. Other than that, the restrictions for gathering limits, for any sector-specific guidelines that are out there for any businesses, they're all being lifted on Saturday. So there's really, people can kind of take a breather, a nice breath, and say that we're getting back to normal, which will be nice. So there's quite a bit of orders that are being rescinded, you know, almost too many to list, but so it's easier to say that they're all being lifted rather than, you know, go down the list. The governor's state of emergency is ending on June 15th, so there's a lot of things under like the legislation that's pertains to how government is run that I think the state of emergency really affects more so than, you know, everyday business. So those are some things that we'll just keep an eye out for, like outdoor dining. I heard that there might be an extension for some of these most of the restaurants to continue with their outdoor dining even after the state of emergency ends, because they'll have 60 days to comply. But you know, that brings you to August, and then if you look at August, to say to a restaurant, you know, okay, you're done with outdoor dining, it's like almost at the peak of outdoor dining is August. So I think that there could be something out there that maybe they'll get to stay with their outdoor dining until October of this year. That's what I'm hearing anyway, so we'll just keep you guys updated and all the restaurants updated on what they need to do. So other than that, it's just been a lot. It's been busy again, but in a different way. So, but it's been okay. I don't know if anyone has any questions.
That's great. Thank you for that update, Shelley. That's
Sure.
great. I'll open it up to questions or discussions.
Sorry, I just have one question.
Sure.
Do you find the restaurants in town that have the outside seatings, have they approached you at all to see if they can continue on even into next year or anything? Because I'm hearing very positive things about these.
Yes, they have. So in order for restaurants to have a more permanent outdoor dining, they'd have to go through the process of going through the planning board and in-site plan for that. So they have to think about it. So because it really is altering their footprint of their business, but there's a few out there that would like to keep it.
Thank you.
Yeah, Madam Chair. No question, but just, I can see a big
Yeah.
relief, a smile, pressure is lifting a little bit, so that's
Yeah.
nice to hear. And,
It is.
just a
Yeah.
big thank you to you, your staff, the department, everyone in Wilmington, really, from the police, fire, DPW, everybody just coming together, doing the right thing, the right time, and really led by you in your department. And,
Yeah, everyone's been really great. My contact traces are pretty much done, which is nice, knock on wood. I have one that's hanging around, that's to the end of the school year, to do some of the school stuff, so, but for the most part, just me and Tracy, the public health nurse, will just continue on with cases ourselves, and we'll keep them on the back burner, just in case. You never know what the fall's gonna bring, but I hope it stays, this trend just stays this way. Would be really nice. And everyone's been really great. It's been, you know, the whole town, like all the department heads and everyone, it's been nice to be able to work with people every day. And Jeff's been we've just been so good, just letting me run with it and do what I needed to do. And like, you know, no big questions, just, and Kerry, they've just been really great. So it's been so easy for me. So that's why it wasn't, you know, I mean, it was stressful, but not like I heard from other towns where you see these public health directors that were quitting and leaving, and they couldn't take it. So it wasn't like that here. It was good.
Good. Yep. I agree with what Mr. Kyer said. I mean, absolutely wonderful job. Just as a resident, a parent, I mean, it really has been seamless. Your communication's been unbelievable. So kudos to you and your team and everybody. It's honestly been excellent. Mr. Bendel, yeah.
Shelley, thank you very much. I'm really glad you didn't quit. But we really appreciate your leadership. I mean, you were fantastic throughout this whole thing. I can't imagine how stressful it was. But you and your whole department did an awesome job. We dealt with you personally in my house, and we really appreciated that. And you guys were fantastic. And I do have a question. I think it might be pointed towards Jeff. You may recall that in addition to the state of emergency, the town has also issued a state of emergency, and that would be something that we have to lift. Is that correct?
That's right. I would recommend at the board's meeting on the 14th of June, which will be the day before, that the board, assuming, I think it's pretty much a given at this point, that the state of emergency from the governor will be lifted, that the board do the same for the local emergency.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Shelley.
Thanks.
Anybody else?
I want to echo what everyone else said. It's really nice to see you, not on Zoom.
I know.
Yeah.
In person, even if we're still masked up.
Yeah.
But seeing your happiness is wonderful, because I know
Yeah.
there were some times that it was just daunting to have to even report to us, I'm sure. So thank you for staying the course and for keeping everyone safe.
It's been good. It's all good. We're doing good. Wilmington's doing well. I'm happy
Yes.
with the vaccination rates. They're going well.
Good.
So
Wonderful.
easy to find a vaccine now, which is nice too.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming in with the
Sure.
report.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thanks, Shelley. Okay, next on our agenda, excuse me, we have Michael Woods, the DPD Director, and Joseph Lobayo, I hope I'm saying that okay, DPD Business and Utility Manager, regarding Public Water System Award Outstanding Performance and Achievement 2021. Good evening.
We're here tonight to provide some good news. The State Department of Environmental Protection has awarded the Water Division, or the Water System for Wilmington, an award. And Joe, being the guy that works with water every day and keeps everything in check, especially with the DEP, he's here to tell you all about it and all the efforts that the department has put into achieving this. So if you hold, Joe.
Thanks, Mike, and thanks to the board, and thanks to Mr. Hall for having us here tonight. As Mike mentioned, we were recently notified by Mass DEP that the Town of Wilmington Water Department was awarded with an Outstanding Performance and Achievement Award. This is an annual recognition program that the Mass DEP runs for all certified water operators in addition to all municipal water systems. And just for some context, there are over 750 public water supplies. So this particular award is a compliance-based award where in order to be eligible, the state reviews its database for all samples, water quality related and whatnot. And how they operate is they go through the actual database and they check for compliances historically throughout 2020 specific to this award. From there, they take your compliance score and separate it into tiers, both high and low. Luckily, Wilmington is in the top upper echelon of those tiers. And from there, they break it down even further by size of community, which Wilmington's considered a medium to large community. So the scores are tabulated on a point system, and they're based on a couple different criteria. The system, Wilmington, must be in compliance for all of 2020, like I mentioned, for all regulations that are in place. And the second criteria, which is more, I'd say, of an honor, more impressive, is that you have to have no enforcements for 5 years in a row previous to this current year. That in itself is something to be proud of, and that's something that is a great achievement for multiple reasons. The water system takes hundreds and hundreds of samples on a yearly basis, and if you've worked with the DEP, there are certainly time-sensitive dates that have to be achieved. And not only that, but you have to make sure that all your samples do not exceed the max contaminant level. So we're talking close to probably over 5 years, thousands of samples that are two things, both submitted on time and also below the max contaminant level. So with that in itself, I think it's important to recognize that Wilmington has certainly achieved something positive. Typically, on an annual basis, this presentation is held on a banquet with a dinner, and it's presented to each individual, of course. But with COVID and all, and as we've all witnessed the past year, it'll be over Zoom next week on June 1st, I believe. Actually, I should mention that this isn't the first time that Wilmington's been awarded with something along the likes of this. 2007, Wilmington received the same award, Outstanding Performance and Achievement. 2015, we were recognized for our water conservation efforts. And also in 2018, once again, we were recognized for water conservation efforts. So you've heard that twice, so what does that mean? I'm not to get into the weeds, but more or less, it's how you operate the water system efficiently. It's your unaccounted for water, it's your leak detection program. It's how much water each person uses in your town per day. Essentially, like I said, it's the efficiency of your water system. Once again, something that we're proud of. I think while we're here, it'd be prudent to, while it's great to be recognized with Mike accepting this award, I think it's important to really recognize the guys in the field. The water treatment plant operators, along with the distribution operators, the guys who are really out there day to day performing the work, everything from your typical daily response to maintenance items, or even the bad things where it's 2 o'clock in the morning on a February night and it's sub-zero and the guys are up to their knees in water in a trench and there's icicles hanging from their helmets and pumps are freezing up, and all this is going on while people are sleeping. And I know I myself take it for granted when I turn the water on, I expect water from my faucet, but it's really a tough industry and these guys really work hard to make sure that all of us are able to do that. As I mentioned, there's a lot that goes into this. The town of Wilmington has over 7,000 water services to town. We have over 130 miles of water main in the system, along with 3 water towers and 2 treatment plants. So it's the guys behind the scenes who you don't see that really make all this run. So with that, I think this is something to be proud of. It's an achievement for the town. And I want to say thank you to everyone involved, everywhere from Mr. Hull to Mike to me, and everyone who's part of our team. So with that, I guess that's what I have to say. I'll happily answer any questions you may have.
Thank you so much, and congratulations to you and your teams and all the people that we don't see doing that work. I'll open it up to questions and discussions.
Congratulations, Gary DePalma. I'm so nice to hear some good results for our water, finally. I congratulate the water department very strongly, and continue on with the great work. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Bennett?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Guys, thank you very much for being here. This is great. Obviously, you said you're very proud. You should be. We're really proud of you and all your men. Great work, and thank you so much. It's nice to hear that this is the third time in about 5 years that we've got this, so that's fantastic. We'd love to keep that going, and just a real kudos to all your men. Thank you so much.
Mr. Guerrero?
Just to echo Selectman Bendel, thank you for the work that you do day in and day out on behalf of the residents in town. This is just a wonderful award. You should be proud of it. And just the work you do, and we thank you for what you do, and hopefully we'll get more of these awards in the future.
Just to thank you for the explanation. Thank you for pointing out kind of the work, because I agree that most of us take it for granted when we turn our faucets on that we're going to get water, and we don't put any thought into it. And as a homeowner who's gotten the jugs over the years to do the samples and leave them back out, it's nice to know that that is part of a greater effort, you know, to not just think of it as, well, the town's asking me to do this again, and you don't really think about it, to realize that that's helping to show that the town does, you know, such a great job, and to monitor it so closely. So thank you for all of your work and all of your team's work in that.
I did have one question. With 2020, did you find it probably a more challenging year with people being home and probably water usage going up?
I would say it was different, for
Yeah.
sure. Like, that's an understatement. We all can recognize that. Certainly more people were home, which led to more residential usage.
Yeah.
But on the flip side, you had less businesses open, which of course led to less business usage.
Right.
But overall, I think as a department, I mean, we ran business as usual. We might not have been in the office as much as we typically are, but our guys were ready to go and were able to respond and address things as any other year they would.
That's wonderful. Well, I think it's even, I view it as even a little more special that you got it in 2020, given everything that was going on. So a little extra kudos to you on that. So thank you so much. Appreciate you coming in to talk to us tonight.
Madam Chair, if I could just
Yeah, of
offer
course,
one comment. Certainly, as Joe indicated, these kind of awards are in part due to the management of the department, and Mike and Joe are testament to that, but also the people that are out on the field, as Joe described, day in and day out when we're in the comfort of our home. I do want to acknowledge one person in particular, Dave Schulters, who will be retiring, I believe his last day is tomorrow. And he has worked as a treatment plant operator for, what, 40 years? Almost 40 years.
Yeah, it's been a long time.
And that, you know, a testament to dedication to the town of Wilmington, and particularly the water treatment system.
That's wonderful.
While we're all thanking each other,
Yeah.
we just want to thank you for all your support, and both finance and publicly, and certainly the town manager for letting us run the department and giving us the funds to do so.
Thank you for doing it so well. Appreciate it. Okay, next we are going to move on to Dana Burnham from the Farmers Market regarding a Farmers Market winery license. Good evening.
Good evening. I'm Christine Canaveri. This is Dana, who you've all met before. Thanks for having us tonight, and I think you have received a few slides in advance too. So we're here to discuss bringing a wine vendor, and with the potential of later on down the line, potentially cider or farm breweries, but tonight we're specifically talking about wine, and bringing them into the farmers market to be a vendor. So we have done a little bit of background on how this came to be allowed in the state, and it was passed in 2010. Farm wineries that already are licensed are allowed to sell and offer sampling consumption on-site at farmers markets, as long as they are deemed a farmers market by the Massachusetts Department of Agriculture. And so the process that the winery goes through is to gain approval from the Massachusetts Department of Agriculture. Once they get information from us as the farmers market, once they are approved as both a vendor and we are approved as a farmers market, then they are allowed to come to the town that hosts the farmers market to request a special license. And that license can be granted and at a cost of up to $50 for the vendor. So we've looked into the surrounding communities. There are a number. You'll see Andover, Belmont, Chelmsford, Lexington, the list goes on. The vendor that we've done a little bit of research with is called Aronap Cellars. You may be familiar with them. They vend at least 4 of those town farmers markets, so they're very familiar with the process of working with MDR and working with the towns in granting these special licenses. So they are willing to also work with us here in Wilmington, given approval by yourselves. Did I miss anything? I think that. So what we're seeking is your approval to proceed with the process to be able to allow a vendor to go to MDR, gain approval, and then come to you to request the special application for the license.
Thank you.
Just wanted to add, we'd met with Jeff earlier, and he did ask us to check in with Shelley Newhouse to see if she had any objections, and she says she doesn't.
Okay, great, thank you. I'll open it up to discussions, questions.
Question I have is, have you spoken to the police chief regarding this matter and fire?
We
Not
haven't,
directly.
but I think Jeff was going to invite
Yes.
Chief Desmond
Chief
for
Desmond.
this purpose, so.
Jeff did call me about it, and we have no objection at all. This is fairly common at farmers markets, and we don't anticipate any issues at all.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, I just wanted to suggest that the farmers market come here this evening to present the concept and get a sense from the board as to whether this is something that you would be amenable to, because as was noted, if this is something the board would not object to, then the farmers market would have a wine vendor pursue the licensing with the state and then ultimately come back to the board for a specific vote to authorize and issue a license. So I think it would be helpful tonight to get a sense of whether this is something you would be willing to consider.
Thank you. Mr. Bendel?
Thank you both for being here. Nice to see you again. I'm remembering just a few years ago when we had the study done on Route 38, one of the recommendations is that one of the best fits for businesses here would be a brewery.
Yeah.
And then I'm reminded of this most recent town meeting where residents overwhelmingly supported a bylaw change for a brew pub. I think this falls nicely in line. I don't think there'll be any objection from any residents. I think it'll be a nice addition. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to this. This is a great addition. Now, did you say that there'll be sampling?
Right.
Right,
Yes.
so the licensing does, the law does allow sampling, but no more than 5 ounces per customer, and they have to be
Can I
21, obviously.
suggest a Moscato, because I like sweet wine?
Put in a
That's all right.
request.
Oh, okay. Good luck, this is a great idea.
Thanks.
Yeah, I just want to echo, I think it's fair to say that you would have the support here. I love the idea of kind of one-stop shopping on the Sunday morning when you go and you kind of get to browse the vendors, and you've been doing a great job throughout the years of expanding it already with the vendors that you're inviting and the specialty vendors that have come. I would just say that the one question or the one thing that I would want to make sure that's addressed when you come back to us kind of for the final licensing is it is such a great family event, and I understand that there's already safety precautions involved with sampling and making sure that people are 21 who would be getting the sampling. I would just want to make sure that the chief, is read into the situation and can give you maybe some suggestions on how to make sure that it remains kind of a family-friendly event, even with alcohol being on the premises. But other than that, I say that just as kind of the one thing I would want to make sure occurs, but I in no way discourage the idea. I think it's wonderful that people can kind of go and have that full experience.
Thank you.
Thank you, and I agree. I think this is a great idea. One question I did have is, the vendor, if they go for the licensing, is it just for that season, but they have to reapply every season?
Right. Yes.
Right, yeah, we'd have to have MDR, once again, approve us as, under their laws, or their concept, a farmer's market, which means you have to have 2 farms in order to be a farmer's market.
Okay.
That's the bare minimum. So, yeah, I think we'd have to apply.
So every
I mean,
year
I
you'd
can
have to go
verify
through the
that. I
process
can
as
reach
well.
out to MDR and
Yeah.
say, it sounds like it because it's date-based.
Sure.
When the vendor submits the application, they have to submit what dates the event occurs.
Great. I think it's great. I think, like Joe Marie said, you can go there and really get a complete Sunday dinner now, to take home with you. So I think it's a great idea. Good luck.
Thank you.
It is. I agree with Mrs. O'Mahony. The only thing I would request is if you give us a wine list ahead of time, please.
And we also would just like to say that we're really excited to be back in person on the Swing Green this year. Thankfully, we managed to keep some of the vendors going last year with the drive-through, but we're really excited about everyone coming back onto the Swing Green in person.
Thank you. We're looking forward to it as well.
Great.
Thanks. Thank you so much for coming in.
Thanks. Have a good evening.
You too. Okay, next on the agenda, communications. I will turn that over to Mr. Hull.
Okay, first item under communications is a memo from me with regard to the tenure of board designees and appointments to boards and committees. This is a topic that was brought up previously. You'll recall that there was discussion about the tenure of members on certain board-designated committees, specifically the Inhabitant Bylaw Committee, Open Space and Recreation, Economic Development, Commission on Disabilities, Library Strategic Planning Committee, the MBTA Advisory Board, Senior Center Building Committee, and the Town School Administration Committee. The suggestion here is to, based upon a previous memo, if the board is looking to limit the tenure of board designees, that one way to do that is perhaps to inquire in March, for example, if the existing member who is representing the board on one of these committees is seeking to continue to serve, and as you know, all the appointments are made at the second meeting in April. One other consideration is whether you establish a cap on the number of years that a board designee could serve. The intent in bringing this up again tonight is just to get some more specificity in terms of how the board wishes to proceed. Is there intention to have a written policy or some kind of a general guideline? So this is one element of what was previously discussed. The other, there seemed to be discussion about reviewing board appointments. As you know, there are a number of appointments that the board makes, including the Board of Appeals, Cable TV Advisory Committee, Council of the Arts, Disabilities Commission, Fence Viewer, Historical Commission. The town manager makes the appointment with confirmation from the board, Board of Registrars. All of these committees, I would point out, do have term limits on them already, with the exception of the Cable TV Advisory Committee, which is typically they serve for the duration of a license renewal. So I'm not sure if there's, well, did seem to be some discussion about having the membership on those committees evaluated where they do have term limits. I guess the only question would be if someone is coming up for their term limit, is the board's intent to have them submit a letter of their intention to continue to serve, or exactly what is the course of action there. Typically, whether it's an appointment that the board makes or an appointment that I make, I will indicate to the department heads that support that particular board or committee to reach out, usually in February, March, to the existing member and find out if they're interested in continuing to serve, and then also to advise me if the department head is confident that they're meeting the grade, so to speak, that they're attending the meetings and engaged and so on. And if that's the case, then in the appointments I make, I will typically reappoint them. In the case of, board appointments, certainly if someone was not interested in being reappointed, typically they would notify the board, as was done in my case with a member to the Conservation Commission. He provided me with notice, and you'll recall Mr. Sousa did the same with you when he was seeking not to be reappointed to the Registrar of Voters. So again, I'm not sure exactly what the board is seeking to pursue on that point, but I just wanted to raise that again. If you're looking to have letters sent out to these people as they approach their term, we can certainly do that. I'm just looking for some direction there. And then the third category of board appointments has to do with appointments to committees or boards that the board makes on your own. So, for example, in the Economic Development Committee, each member had the opportunity to select someone to serve, and in some cases, as board members leave the board, either choose not to run for re-election or step down, the question becomes their appointment, if you will. What happens to that individual? Do they serve indefinitely, or does the new member who fills that seat get an opportunity the next time around to either appoint someone else, or how would the board look to deal with that? So I just want to put those things out on the table, perhaps for some further clarification from the board.
Thank you. Discussion?
So, in reading this and kind of thinking through the conversation that we had, I think we have had, in more recent months, we have had more regular reports on some of the committees, which has been great. And I would never want committees to feel like they have to report into us too frequently. But I do think we need to make sure we have some type of parameters around the communication to us, that we're either getting the meeting minutes in a timely manner after a meeting, or they're sending some type of update on some type of regular basis. I mean, I think part of the struggle is some of these boards meet, monthly or even twice a month, and some boards don't meet as frequently. So I think it would be helpful for me to be able to give kind of the guidance that I would be looking for, or the feedback I would be looking for, to know kind of how frequently are they meeting, how many members are there. I know you put that together previously, Jeff, for us, so maybe just to again, send it out to us again to share so we can review it. I think when we're kind of doing the board reorganization after the election cycle, it would be a good time to look at some of the, like we did this time, to have the discussion, what vacancies are there, what needs to be filled, what opportunities are there to appoint someone to a committee. Because I do think, I don't know if we necessarily do term limits, but I do think we need to make sure that for the members of the board, and we're a young board now, that we don't have someone, with extended tenure anymore, but to have someone appointed to a committee that's on it for 10 years because, they've enjoyed it, and that prohibits a newer member of the Board of Selectmen from appointing anyone to that committee, I think is what we need to figure out. Because it's always great to have volunteers. We don't want to discourage people from being on it and staying committed to a committee that has a purpose, but at the same token, you know, we want to make sure that we understand if they're fulfilling their purpose, if they're still working towards the goal that we assume they're working towards, and that we have someone that's going to kind of represent our position in that. So for example, you know, we have a great representation for the senior center and the new town hall, and we get those updates regularly because we have a member of the board on it, right? We get the meeting minutes from the Economic Development Committee as to kind of what they're doing in a pretty timely manner. But some of these committees, we don't really hear from as much, or we don't get updates as much. And I think it would be helpful, if I don't have someone appointed to it, I don't necessarily feel comfortable just reaching out and saying, hey, what are you guys talking about this month? So that's kind of where I'm coming from with it. I think there should be some type of just annual review, and it makes sense to do it around the same time as the election period ending, because if we have a new member of the Board of Selectmen, that gives them the opportunity to weigh in as well. So that's kind of, I don't know if that helps you or just adds to the confusion, but that's where I'm coming from with this, is to make sure that we always have a full committee, that they always understand their purpose, and that they are reporting to us regularly, so we know how they're working towards the goals that we're asking them to work towards.
So it sounds like the suggestion is at least annually for all the boards and committees to provide some kind of an update or a status, written status. Okay.
That's what I would like. I mean, again, another example that's in my head is we have this ice rink committee that was formed when there was a possibility of buying Rustusha, right? And now that committee's purpose has kind of shifted, and instead of focusing on how do we develop it for one specific location, my understanding is they're now exploring other options, right? They're exploring other locations and other possible partnerships with private entities. So the original intent of that committee has evolved as kind of circumstances has changed. But I would love to know more about their current, thoughts and what they're doing. We get updates somewhat regularly, but that's one of those committees that, in my mind, I'm kind of like, we have resources working on that, but there might be another need in town that we don't have a committee on right now that might make sense to have a committee on. And again, not to target that one specifically, but that's one that, we started it for one purpose, it's evolved into something a little different, and yet, we sit here, for me, 2.5 years, 3 years later, and kind of just curious if they're any closer to the goal of having a rink in town, or if it's just continued discussions and seeing what opportunities are available. And is there an expiration date to that?
I think some of the information that board members may be able to gather is actually in the annual reports that all the boards and committees do each year. Those are turned in January, typically, for the calendar year. We can certainly look at other means to try to provide more timely information. Is there anything further?
I have no qualms with any board that has a ending date. Hypothetically, the Town Hall School Administration Building, that's going to eventually have an ending date. And we should just continue on supporting the individuals that are on that committee or board, and not interrupt their continuity, so to speak. I'd like to see more notification of what openings each board or committee has on it ahead of the town manager announcing who his selection is for that for that position, for no other reason, so that we know that there are positions coming up on certain boards. And it would also, at the same time, it would attract the town's residents would be notified that there are positions available in these certain committees. But again, like I said, anything that has a closing date on it, I have no qualms with. The hockey rink committee, for instance, one day, we're gonna have a hockey rink, or we're not, but no matter what, one day, it's gonna be, we're at the end of this committee. And again, like I said, unless someone's stepping down, I do not want to see us upset the apple cart, so to speak, and then it takes longer to get something done. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So just to be clear, my intentions on this was ultimately just to remove myself from the Economic Development Committee. Somewhere we got astray from that, and I do that because I think we have an excellent new designee available to this board, and as a result of the election, we kind of saw that coming, and in fairness to residents, you know, the Economic Development Committee was designed to have one designee from the Board of Selectmen. We now have two as a result of the election. I think my colleague is doing a great job, and I'm happy to withdraw myself from consideration, and I think we'll have an opportunity to take that up later today. But I think that's just really where my intention on was this. I also want to add, I think the manager did an excellent job in his appointment of Lil to the Economic Development Committee, and so perhaps he'll have an opportunity to appoint someone new. But given that there are two selectmen currently on I'm happy to take a step back and let Lil continue to do a great work that she's doing. So that's on that piece. The second piece, I just wanted to say, I tend to agree with some of the commentary you already mentioned about the monthly updates. I think we've got great updates from MBTA and Town Hall, and in fact, bylaws a few months back now, maybe a year. But I think we're getting sufficient updates. I'd hate to bog people down. As I've mentioned, we have volunteers. Going to a monthly meeting can be a lot to ask. Yeah. Never mind having to say, hey, you got to come before the Board of Selectmen, and you better have something, So I'd hate to put them in that position, and certainly as things come up, I think we should get updates if things are going on. But if nothing's going on, it's status quo, then certainly continue the good work that they're doing, and they shouldn't have to come here. I think the committee reports we get are sufficient. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Chair. Yeah, I would also echo town managers of looking in the annual report for the reports, the minutes that we receive. So I too don't believe that we need to have people coming in here all the time. Plus, we're all a liaison to a certain committee. I'm the liaison to the rink committee. So if you want to report on that, if it's on the agenda, I'll give a report on that. Same as the Economic Development Committee, or the Disabilities Committee, or the MBTA. So we can give reports ourselves to those committees, as we've done with the building projects. I do think that we need term limits in certain committees, whether it's a 2-year or 3-year term limit. So that way you know when it's going to end for that individual, and then the selectmen can reappoint that same person or reappoint someone else if it's a new selectman coming in. So I think we need to look at that as well. In regards to the rink committee was brought up, so I'll mention that a little bit. It hasn't changed its focus. Its focus has been to try to find a rink for the youth in town. It's always had a focus of doing a public-private project. So it's moving forward. It did take a bit of a stall during the pandemic, unfortunately, but it's back up and running. It's had a meeting recently. A survey is going to be going out to the public, and then we're hoping for a second survey and moving forward from there. But that's, everything else, I mean, you mentioned the Board of Appeals and things of that. They already have the natural term limits on this. You don't need to address that. But I just think if you want the reports, they can be written to us, or we can give them as liaison to that committee.
Yep.
If I may, I'm always impressed by the school committee when they do their reorganization. They must have I can't believe the amount of subcommittees they have. It's got to be like 3 dozen. Yep. And in most cases every year, watching, it moves pretty quick, like 5 minutes. I can't believe how fast they go through it. And it's just like, you want to do this? You want to do this? Yep, okay, okay. This particular there was no change. They just had to go through it, right? You still want to be on this committee? Yep. You still want to be on this one? You know, the chair stayed the same for the third time, vice chair, and all the subcommittees, and they pretty much, I think there was 1 or 2 this year, but they just did it so efficiently, and I think we can get to that point where, okay, Joe Marie, you're doing a great job on MBTA, you want to stay? Yep, okay. I think that's where we should be. Thank you.
Thank you. I agree. I think the only thing is, I hope the committees, people that don't want to serve anymore, you know, their time, they can't do it. I hope they'll be honest about it, because I think some people might feel, you know, maybe some pressure and stuff to stay. So I just hope whoever, you know, is in charge of those type of committees and stuff, you know, I would assume they are. We're all adults, but just to that, I hope people don't feel pressured into staying or anything like that.
Okay, so next on the, under communications is a memo with regard to a State House note. You will recall at the May 5th, 2018 annual town meeting, voters were asked to approve, and in fact did approve, a $2.5 million authorization to replace the Nassau Ave water tank. That project has been completed. The tank, as many of you probably know, is up there. We're going to be in the process of removing the old one. But as part of that, we've done some temporary borrowing, and the State House note that is currently in place is due the beginning of June. The board already authorized the borrowing at a prior meeting. So what the board will be asked to do this evening at the conclusion of the meeting is to simply sign the note that would authorize a new one-year State House note. Next is communication from Brian Perry, the Finance Director, regarding the status of Munis. You'll recall Munis is our financial software package. Brian has been working with Tyler Technologies, who is the vendor that we're using for the Munis system. He's also been working with Paul Ruggiero, the Assistant Superintendent of Admin and Finance over at the school department, to develop a game plan for them to get ready for this transition. The target date at this point for the general ledger, which includes accounts payable, cash management, grants administration, and purchasing, is November 1st. So that'll be the first major component of this project to come online. Right now, there is work being done to transfer some of the data that's in the current system, the SoftWrite system, into Munis, determining which employees have permissions to view specific data, which employees have permission to alter the data. That's all being done and will continue to be done as we go through the summer. Tyler Technologies, they have an individual that will be working with the school department to assist them in that process. I know they've making some arrangements with some of their personnel on the school side to help out in this effort. There's an expectation that user training will be started in late September and going into October. And then once the first phase goes in, the second phase will be payroll and HR functions. And we look to start that during the tax year, so the slated date is 1/1/2023.
Madam Chair, this is the type of report that I like to see, if we're talking about reports from individuals or committees. When the town allocates $1 million for a new system, this is what I want to see, and especially on page 2 when it says expectations of that you're going to stay within the budget. So that's a good thing. And that should have been, you know, we should have referenced that. So kudos to Brian Perry and his team for starting to implement this project.
Next is a memo from Valerie Gingrich. This has to do with the Municipal Vulnerability and Preparedness and Hazard Mitigation Plan. All communities are required to go through this process in recognition of the changes that are happening as a result of climate change. The town was able to go out and obtain a grant for $31,000 to complete this effort. Green International affiliates and Jamie Kaplan Consulting are working with the town to complete this process. There are at least a couple of goals involved. One is to identify the natural hazards and vulnerabilities posing the greatest impact to the town due to climate change, and then also developing approaches to make the town more resistant and resilient to the impacts. And then finally, secondly, to update a prior version of the hazard mitigation plan, which was approved by the Federal Emergency Management Agency. The plan is to have a upcoming workshop or virtual session on June 7th, which will be the second of two resiliency sessions. This is scheduled for 4 p.m. Via Microsoft Teams, which is one of the various platforms, essentially to obtain community input. The plan will be reviewed, or at least it will be summarized to folks that are participating in really seeking some public input on the efforts that ultimately we're going to have to make over the next several years. I would say once this process is completed, the advantage, aside from creating the resiliency that we'll need to deal with potential flooding issues and other high-impact issues in the future, is it will be available or eligible for grants that will assist us in trying to mitigate some of the potential future impacts. I would just note that for those who may be interested in seeing the document, it can be found on the town's website, www.wilmingtonma.gov/planning-conservation/pages/2021-draft-MVP-and-HMP-plans. So if you go to the town's website in Planning and Conservation, you can find this document and obtain more information. Again, the next public information session is June 7th at 4 p.m., and you'll also find a link on the town's website. Next is under correspondence, or a series of letters to the board. And I'll just start with the first one here. This is addressed to Madam Chair. After watching the Selectmen's meeting on May 19, 2021, I wanted to offer my comments on a particular...
At this time, since we are going into executive session, I will request that we go into executive session now, where I have not had my rights to make a motion on an issue coming up. Thank you.
These were asked to be put into record, so we do have to read them into record. Do we want to take a vote on going into executive session now, or?
I don't hear a second to his
Does anybody have
ask
a
for
second?
executive session, so I would just not entertain it.
I mean, I'll second it for discussion. I don't understand
Okay,
what's
second for
happening right now,
discussion.
so let's have a discussion about it.
Okay. Okay, Mr. Palmer.
Going into executive session, it's right here under 7:30. It's pertaining to negotiations with the town manager's contract. And since these are all pertaining to the town manager, I just feel it would be better if we go into executive session first, come out of that, and then all these can be read.
Yes.
If I may, I would object to that, given that folks are tuning into this meeting expecting to see particular items that are listed. I'd hate to have them to wait until we're done. Presumably, that could be a short, or could be a long conversation, I can't predict, but I know that people are watching at home, expecting to see the business of the town, especially the number of board to considers that we have. You know, one of them, a board to consider item number 11. I see the chief is in the audience. I'd hate to have him wait around to answer any questions on number 11.
Yep.
That's my reason for objection.
Thank you.
I guess, because we started communications, it looks like the executive session was supposed to start after the farmer's market presentation, but then we started communications, so I guess I'm just confused.
Yeah, that was
As to-
misplaced, I believe. The arrangement was that we were going to go into public, our executive session, and then go into public session, and then back into executive session.
Right, as a standard practice, notwithstanding the order that it is on the page, we have as a practice when there are executive sessions following the open meeting, just listed the second executive session after appointments, you know, recognizing that communications and the other items will occur beforehand, but certainly if it's the desire of the chair for any future executive sessions happening at the conclusion, to place that at the very end, we can do that.
Thank you. At least maybe we'll note it when it'll take place. I do think we need to move forward with this because we do have people here that need to speak, and it is being recorded. The only issue I have is that these were asked to be recorded into the session. If we want to skip them, proceed with the rest of the meeting, I don't know if that's...
I mean, I guess I know we had a motion and a second that hasn't been voted on yet, but, and I don't want to amend, you know, Selectman DePalma's motion, but I think at this point,
Take a vote.
given that these are communications that were asked to be read into the
The record.
the minutes, I would just suggest that I would make a motion that we take these letters as written and move them into the record without the town manager needing to read them verbatim,
Do I have a second?
in the open meeting.
Well, Madam Chair, you already have a motion on the floor. You can't
Okay.
take a second motion. You have to act on that motion first, and I would be opposed to that motion.
Okay.
And if we go into executive session, it's for preparations for negotiations. So it sounds to me as if we're going to be negotiating a new contract for the town manager, because that's what this session implies here, that we're going to be negotiating a new contract with them. So I think we should just wait until we get to that point in time, go through the regular protocol of communications all the way down, and then have executive session. That would be my, if you're taking a vote on that, that would be my...
Well, Mr. DePaula made a motion to go into executive session.
I'll remove my motion. But, last meeting, I brought this up and I asked for a motion, and I was told no at that time. Let's look at it, and we'll get back, and we'll do it next meeting. And I was denied my right to have a motion present at this meeting. But we can go through this now, and we will discuss, we'll go into executive session at the end of, I guess, at the end of our meeting. So I will remove my motion at this time.
I don't know why you're looking at me. I didn't
Oh, no,
refuse
I'm
your...
sorry, no, it's just...
I didn't
it was
refuse
just
your
a-
motion.
Oh, no, I'm not
okay,
looking at you at all, Mr.
Oh, okay.
I am looking at you, but all it is just...
I know I'm good-looking, but I, yeah.
Well,
Okay, so
us
motion
old guys gotta
removed.
stay together.
Ms.
But I will
Omaha, do you
remove
want to
my
make the
motion.
motion to
Yes,
remove those letters?
I mean, I understand the purpose of the communications, and I
Yep.
understand that it falls in next, but my concern is, we have an executive session scheduled for after this meeting.
Yep.
That these letters are addressing in their way, and obviously the members of the community and the members of the town staff have the right to inform us of what they're thinking and to make sure we understand their positions, and I'm not negating that.
Yep.
I just think, given that we have an executive session scheduled to discuss basically partially the contents of these letters, instead of having the town manager, who the executive session is going to be discussing,
Right.
have to read, 7 or 8 letters in supporting him continuing to be the town manager,
Yep.
we move them into the record. It would be the same as if the executive session at 6 PM, we had every firefighter write a letter to us saying, you know,
Right.
please consider the collective bargaining discussions. You know, I just don't think this is appropriate to have, you know, to take 30 minutes to read letters supporting the town manager when we're about to have a conversation about the town manager in executive session.
Okay.
So I would move that these all be entered into the record as written, without any edits or modification, but that we don't have to go through the exercise of having the town manager have to read them verbatim for the next 20 minutes.
Okay. Do I have a second?
Discussion, if I may.
Discuss-
I
yep.
just wanted to add and see if you'd be willing to, the common practice, I think, in the past, if we do often get lengthy communication, is that the manager will just reference who it's from. I think, you know, if you'd be willing, I think that at least the person who took the time to write would be acknowledged.
That I move to amend my motion that the town manager will reference the people who wrote it, and I guess a summary of
And that's,
the
yeah,
letter.
not to interrupt you, but that's kind of been the common practice over the years in my short time here, is that oftentimes you might say, we got a letter, and we all know what's regarding, it says right here, but who wrote the letter? And not always is the letter read into the record. Another similarity is in the school committee. Public comments are submitted, thank you very much, they're not all read into the record. So I think that I see that as a compromise, if you're willing.
And I amend my motion
Yep.
as such.
Okay, do I hear a second on that?
Second.
All in favor? Okay, so moved.
Okay. So this first letter is from George Allen. He writes to the board noting his time working for the town in the capacity of the Water Sewer Commissioners, and is indicating his support of the town manager's continued of me remaining in the position of town manager. The next correspondence comes from Teresa Manganelli in her capacity as a resident, just indicating her belief in continuing or negotiation with respect to continuance of me serving as the town manager.
Madam Chair, just on this
Yes.
particular email that was sent, it indicates that I am writing as a private citizen to express my concern regarding the announcement that the board would like to interview applicants for the town manager's position, implying that 5 members of the board are all in favor of wanting to interview applicants for the town manager's position. As I stated at our last meeting, I'm in support of our town manager, Jeff Hull. So this implies that I want to do that, and I do not. I want to go into the negotiations, as it says here in executive session, to try to work up a new deal with the town manager. So I want that on the record that I'm not part of that board commentary.
So noted.
The next correspondence comes from Deborah Russo, resident, noting also her interest in seeing the process continue for negotiation of a contract in light of the senior center project being in the works. Also is a email from John O'Neill, IT Director, to the board, also suggesting that the process go forward with respect to negotiating a new contract, town manager. Email from Karen Campbell, this is directed to the board, also suggesting that the board proceed with reappointment of the town manager. Email from Pam McKenzie, also suggesting the continuation of contract with the town manager. Then I have a letter here from Tina Conway, town clerk, Also suggesting that the board consider a new contract for the town manager. Next is a press release. This is from RMLD, and this is the fourth year now that they have done conducted this contest. This year, the theme happens to be resiliency, and they ask students in the high school, grade 12, actually up through grade 12, to provide sketches and drawings to kind of cast into picture what the theme is, in this case resiliency. And it's noteworthy that the winners, first place winner Audrey LeConte from Wilmington High School, grade 10. Her artwork is Working Through the Storm. So unfortunately we can't show them here, but you can go online actually to see the work. Second place Julia Kane, Wilmington High School, grade 10. Touch of Light is the theme. Third place, Jess Ding, Wilmington High School, grade 12, Rise Up with Resilience. And then fourth place is Abigail Lebovridge, Reading Municipal High School, grade 10. I would note that anybody who's interested in checking out the artwork, which is pretty impressive, can view it on RMLD's website at www.rmld.com/community/hs-art-hyphen-2020-2021-artwork. Next under board to consider is the contract for town council services. This is with KP Law, and the contract is a one-year contract. It remains identical to the prior contract with the exception that the hourly rate is increased by $5 per hour.
Okay, I would entertain a motion to the board to consider signing town council's contract for fiscal year 2022.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Read into the record.
Next is the board to consider signing the contract for special counsel. And this is the contract that the town has with Brooks and Durensis, as you recall, for the services associated with Olin, the Olin Superfund site, NET, New England Transrail. And this contract remains unchanged from the current contract, a one-year contract.
Okay, I would entertain a motion, excuse me, for the board to consider signing contract for special counsel, wrong one. No, that's right, council services, sorry, for fiscal year 2022. Shouldn't have taken off my glasses.
So
Sorry.
moved.
Second. All in favor? Discussion? Unanimous? Read into record.
Next is a board to consider accepting a gift of land, approximately 66.10 acres, for the care, custody, and control of the Conservation Commission from Wendy Jo Lewis O'Neill, managing trustee of Lewis Realty Trust, said land located at Ballardvale Street, map R2, parcel 11. This property is just north of 125, the interchange at 125. It is just west of Route 93. It's largely wet. There's noted here in Valerie Gingrich's memo a number of potential vernal pools. There's an area of upland, but it apparently is not accessible because it's bordered by the rail on one side and extensive wetlands on the other. So it does not appear to have any buildable potential, but certainly can complement some existing property that the town has around there that is also wet. So the Conservation Commission has authorized acceptance and the request at this point would be for the board to authorize approval to accept this property.
I would entertain a motion to accepting a gift of land of approximately 66.10 acres for the care, custody, and control of the Conservation Commission from Wendy Jo Lewis O'Neill, Managing Trustee, Lewis Realty Trust, said land located on Ballardville Street, map R2, parcel 11.
I'll make that motion.
Second, all in favor?
Discussion?
Discussion.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So a question through you, maybe to the manager. So are we currently receiving taxes on this property, on the 66 acres?
Yes, it's a small amount. It's less than $500 a year.
Thank you.
Any other discussion? Mr.
This
Carter?
is, I see this as a good thing for open space. Certainly it goes to our inventory, probably helps towards future grants. But how about, has there been an environmental study on this piece of property? Has the Conservation Commission looked at it? We don't want to get ourselves into a situation where we're getting a piece of property that's not environmentally sound, where we may be having to clean it up or that nature. Do you know if the Valerie Gingrich's committee has looked at that aspect? My guess is probably not in the location that it is, but
Right.
just to be, safe.
Yeah, I did speak with her about the prospect of any contamination there. Since, other than the rail line, there's really no other access to it. I believe there was going to be an effort to conduct a record review at DEP. I don't know at this point whether that has taken place yet or not. I hadn't heard back. So, sometimes what'll happen, this is really kind of the first level of review, if you will. DEP maintains files on various parcels, certainly parcels that are contaminated. So one of the efforts that is often done is to contact DEP to check and see if they have anything in their files on a particular parcel. I don't know if that record review was completed.
Mr. Bender?
Madam Chair, thank you. Through you also to the manager. You mentioned it in the memo here about some of it being potentially dry upland of the 66-plus acres. Do you have a guess, an estimate of what might be dry? Is it 2 acres, 5 acres?
I don't have a number on that.
But some of it is.
It's my understanding some of it is, but from talking to Valerie, it does not appear to have any potential for development, just because it's the portion that is upland is surrounded by wet areas on portions of it, and then the one side is buffered by the rail, so there wouldn't be any access to it without going through wetlands.
Thank you.
Do we have a motion? It was seconded. All in agreement? For, against? Okay. Oops. Unanimous, read into record.
Next is a board to consider a request from Tina Stewart, the library director, to use the Swain Green on Wednesday, June 23rd, 6:30 p.m., which is the start of their reading kickoff program. It appears that magical things will be happening there, as they do have a magician that'll be starting off the events of the night. And so this is a request to use the Swain Green.
I would entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, those in favor? Discussion? Favor? Okay, unanimous and read into record.
Next is a board to consider the request of Michael Berry, the Misfit Artists Company, to use Rotary Park and gazebo on Sundays, June 6, 13, 20, and from 1:30 to 3:30 p.m., and then Saturday, June 26, 2021, from noon till 8 p.m. for the youth production of Julius Caesar. You may recall this group made a similar request back in the fall. They also had a production, a small Shakespeare production. Mr. Berry and his wife are co-founders of this group, and they work with students from first grade up to 12th grade, depending upon the casting, obviously. And so this is a request to allow them to use that property. I did have some communication with Mr. Berry and advised, as in the past, that this is a public space and that others would be able to be there. And he indicated that in the prior instance, some of the folks were actually interested in the program that was being presented. So there are no conflicts.
I would entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Second. Discussion? All in favor? Okay, unanimous. Read into record.
Next is a request of the police chief, Joseph Desmond, to use Rotary Park on Tuesday, August 3rd for the 7th Annual National Night Out, and this would run from 5 p.m. to 8 p.m.
I would entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion?
Please.
Yes.
Thank you very much. I see the chief is in the audience. Chief, I'll direct my comments at you. I'm just really grateful that you're bringing this back after just a one-year absence, and totally understandable last year, but so excited that it's happening this year. And I just want to give it a plug. I think it's one of the best events of the year. I would really encourage people, if you haven't been to it before, please come. It's an awesome opportunity to interact and engage with our police officers, share an ice cream, take some pictures, check out the cruisers. I mean, it is just, I think it's one of the finest moments of your department every year. It's just to see how many people, especially kids, interacting with the officers, having positive interactions, and I really strongly encourage everybody to attend. I do have one question for you. Can we anticipate the helicopter, which I think is always the highlight of the night, draws a big crowd?
We are working on it. It's so nice to just have any sort of community outreach. We miss it. Like you said, this is probably one of our most popular things that we do as far as community outreach. And the vendors, people we have called in the past are very excited about coming back. So hopefully that'll include the helicopter.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you. Selectman DePalma.
I also want to congratulate you. I saw you the other day, and I've never seen you with such a big smile on your face. Finally, it's coming back. Congratulations. It's always a good time, and I look forward to being there.
Next under board to consider is a request from
No, we can take a motion.
Oh, sorry.
Yep. All in favor? Okay, unanimous. Read into record.
Next under board to consider is a request from Jayanthi Gutraju, who is the director of the Indian Association of Greater Boston, to raise the flags of India in the United States at the town hall to commemorate India's 75th Independence Day. You'll recall this request was made last year. Typically, in years past, they've had this celebration in Boston at one of the venues there, the Hat Shell, and other locations. But given the COVID situation, they decided to have smaller events in the surrounding communities. And last year, it was held right outside here, in fact, and Lou Samaglier and his staff, Mike and Patty, were gracious enough to help out, and it really worked out very well. And it was a small crowd, but I thought it was an appropriate commemoration. So they have indicated that their Independence Day is August 15th, 1947, but they're asking communities to hold the event anytime between August 1st and August 15th. And my suggestion is that this be held on either August 12th or August 13th, which is a Thursday or Friday, I believe, at 11 a.m. So looking for the board's authorization.
I would entertain a motion. Discussion?
Did Mr. Hull want us to make the motion with either date or both dates, just so there's some flexibility with the rain? So I would make the motion that we would hold it on August 12th or August 13th, weather dependent, at 11 a.m.
Seconded?
Discussion? All in favor? Unanimous. Right into record.
Next is board to consider directing the town manager to take steps to obtain authorization to change the title of the Board of Selectmen to Select Board. You recall this came up at the last meeting. I do know that it was raised, but there was no vote taken, so I just want to confirm that the board in its entirety is looking to take this action.
Chair, just have two questions, if I may.
Sure, of course.
The first one, and I mean this in sincerity, I don't want to insult the Inhabitant Bylaw Committee. Have they had an opportunity to discuss this or make a recommendation, given that we're suggesting that the residents make a change to the bylaw?
No, they have not.
And then my second question is just making sure this is for a year from now, town meeting, so that people would vote on it.
I believe so, yeah.
Thank you.
Any other discussion, or is there a motion?
Yeah,
Make the vote.
Selectman Carr?
in reading the memo, to me, it seems as if the bottom part of the memo where it talks about the zoning bylaws and the planning board having a public hearing, looks to me as if it's coming after a town article, going to town meeting, then going to our state legislature for a bill. It almost makes sense to me that you would start with the zoning bylaws in the planning board and have a public hearing. And then from that point, once that's determined, you would come here at the appropriate time next year with an article to put before town meeting. And then at that point, once it's voted on by the residents, either yes or no, it would go to our state legislature. So it seems to be a bit out of sequence in the way I'm looking at it logically, and I don't know, Mr. Town Manager, would you, your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think that the sequencing would be appropriate to have it first brought up by the planning board. They would have to have a hearing and then bring their recommendation to town meeting. That is with respect to the zoning bylaws. There's three elements to this. One is to change the reference in the zoning bylaws. The second is to change the reference in the inhabitant bylaws. And then the third element is within the Town Managers Act. And that the Town Managers Act is the piece that requires special legislation. So as I understand it, if the planning board were to bring this forward and have a public hearing and receive whatever comments that might come forward, and then present a report at an upcoming town meeting, then an article could be put forward to change the language within the zoning bylaw to make reference to the select board. And then separately, and as I understand it concurrently, an article could be prepared that would make modifications to the inhabitant bylaws, making reference to the select board. And those two articles could be on the same warrant. And then with regard to the special legislation, I believe that would also have to be, well, it would have to, whether it could be part of the article that the inhabitant bylaw addresses, or whether it would have to be a separate article, I don't know at the moment.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Just another question through you. Have we looked at any other, some other towns have done this, what the procedure has been that they follow? To me, it just feels like it's our job to put together well-designed articles so that residents can make a decision at town meeting. So I wondered if we had looked at what other communities had done in terms of the procedure. This is probably the most complicated procedure you've outlined in terms of creating an article since my time, so I wondered.
Yeah, I have not talked to other communities or inquired about their process, but I guess the issue that makes it not quite as straightforward is the fact that there are 3 different elements involved: the zoning bylaw, the inhabitant bylaw, and then the Managers Act.
Yeah, I didn't interpret this as being too difficult,
Yeah.
so maybe I
I don't
dummied
think
it
it's
down.
difficult, it's just a matter of
To me, I
process.
read it as, oh, great, we have plenty of time, we'll get the planning board to do what they need to do, then we can do 3 warrants at the next town meeting to address the 3 different references, and then it could get submitted to the state for their final portion of it. So I read this as, we have 3 references, we need to make 3 modifications, we'll have 3 articles drafted, all kind of addressing the same change, and then we'll be done. I actually was kind of hoping if the planning board would be willing to take it up in the fall and we needed to do any type of special town meeting with the school situation that I think had been referenced previously, that there might be a need for one in December, that this could just be added to that then to get it done even before next
Again, I
year.
don't think it's complicated. I know town council, I think he may be able to offer some
Mr.
direction
Yes,
here, but
please.
I think it's pretty straightforward.
And thank you for outlining this. 'Cause
Yeah.
I think, to me, I was like, oh, okay.
Good evening.
As long as I was in the audience, I would
Yes,
chime
please.
in. The town manager had brought this issue to my attention. We have dealt with a number of communities that have undertaken this change, and obviously it's gaining momentum in many communities. Some municipalities don't have charters, so it makes it easier. The town manager indicated that you have 3 things you have to change. You have zoning bylaws that require the process under Chapter 48, Section 5 for amending zoning bylaws, which requires the public hearing by the planning board and then approval by town meeting. Then you've got the inhabitant bylaws, which are your general bylaws, that simply requires a vote of town meeting. And then you've got the Town Manager Act, which is essentially your charter, which is a special act of legislature and would require a further special act of legislature to amend. So again, requiring authorization from town meeting. So in terms of what the town manager has proposed, it may sound complicated, but it's very consistent with what other towns have done. Some have done it a little more spaced out, and I don't always recommend that, where some towns have done their general bylaws at one meeting, their zoning bylaws at a different meeting. I had one town where it came up by petition, and the petitioners did the general bylaws, didn't do the zoning bylaws, and forgot about the charter, and that caused a bit of delay and a bit of a hassle. What I've told a lot of boards is the board itself can call itself whatever it wants in terms of an informal process. So some boards have taken it upon themselves to call themselves select boards even before there's been any action. Others have waited, others have done it in different manners, but all of them are approaching it in generally the same process. So putting together an appropriate warrant article, working with the town manager, we can certainly do that. I do think you could probably ultimately slim it down to 2 articles. The zoning piece requires a 2/3 vote of town meeting. So we usually separate where you could do a 2/3 vote and a majority vote and separate those out. And then you could decide which you want to do first, which would be your bellwether. I think your second article could certainly have the inhabitant bylaws, and whether you want to have the committee study that, that's always appropriate as well, just to get some familiarity and interest growing in the process. And then that same article dealing with the inhabitant bylaws could certainly also have language as to see if the town will vote to, and then make the change from Board of Selectmen to Select Board, and further to authorize the Board of Selectmen to petition the legislature for special legislation, and then get into that discussion with respect to the Town Managers Act. So those 2 could, in my opinion, consistent with what the town manager just discussed, could be done at one time. So you'd have 2 articles, the zoning article, which would have gone through the planning board process, and then the second article, which would address the inhabitant bylaws and the Town Manager Act in one piece. So that would be a relatively straightforward process, and we could certainly put together an article. We've seen many of them already going forward, so it's something that I could work with the town manager on.
Thank you, appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Any
The
questions?
The Wilmington Apple's already been calling us the select board for a few
Yeah,
years
yeah.
now, so.
This could all happen in one meeting, though, correct?
And I recommend that it would, because it's cleaner. Like I said before, Selectman Palmer, I've seen a couple of towns do it differently, and it results in confusion, actually. So it's useful to do this all at once, but obviously, the planning board process, you have to back that up a little bit, because it has to get to the planning board, have the planning board have enough time to have their public hearing, because they'll have to make a report and recommendation to town meeting.
Great, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Any further discussion? Have a motion?
I would make the motion that we bring this to the Inhabitant Bylaws Committee for their review, and we submit it to the planning board for their consideration. And then once we hear back from both of those entities, we add it back to the agenda to give the town manager guidance as to the future warrant articles.
Anybody second?
A second.
Any further discussion? All in agreement? So be it.
The final board to consider is appointing Lily Maselli as the select member representative to the Economic Development Committee.
I make a motion.
I'll second it.
Oh, sorry. I didn't know if I could make the motion for myself there. I mean, entertain, the whole thing, so. Any discussion?
Discussion, please. I
Yes.
just want to take the opportunity to thank the members of the Economic Development Committee. I see its current chair, Mr. Shampoo, in the audience, and to my fellow volunteers. I've had a great 2-year run on the economic development. I've really enjoyed my time and the sharing of a lot of good ideas, and it's been fun to see it come from its infancy to now 2 years later. And as I mentioned, the reason for this is that it was designed to have one selectman designee on there. I think we have a fine one in this, Ms. Maselli, and I'd be fine shuffling the deck, if you will, and letting some new ideas on there. As I mentioned, just for clarification for anybody who may not know, Ms. Maselli was Mr. Hull's appointment to the committee, and therefore an opening will happen. And along with the Finance Committee openings that we have and other openings that are available, I hope that there'll be another fresh set of ideas from a resident who wants to step up and get involved, and I wish them well. But I fully endorse you as our appointee, and I wish you well.
Thank you, and thank you for your time served. I know it was, it added another agenda item to your life, but we appreciate your time and
Thank you very
dedication to it and great ideas. So you will be missed, but
you.
you know where to find us if you have some good ideas.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Appreciate it. Any further discussion? Okay, all in favor? So be it. Anonymous, read into record. Now we go on to public comments. Do we have any comments? Mr. Shampoo. Good evening.
Good evening, Madam Chair, and members of the board. First and foremost, Mike Shampoo, 10 Gloria Way. Congratulations for staying on Economic Development Committee. We're delighted to have you continue working with us, and I know
Thank you.
that
I'm happy to be
we collectively
staying.
will start to, I think, hit things out of the park here post-COVID. I think as a brief mini report from the committee, a lot of our work over the course of the last year was really just how can we help businesses stay alive. There was not really a lot of development, but we're now focusing a lot more energy on that. Ms. Maselli had asked that we prepare potentially to come in and address you this evening. I asked her if it was okay to hold off until perhaps later in the summer, when I think I hope we'll have the opportunity to come before you and present you with the findings of the consultant that we've been working with over the course of the spring and into the summer, that will have recommendations for what we can do for the business sector that runs Lowell Street and Main Street. So, God willing, we'll have some meaty suggestions that come out of that conversation, and we'll be looking to you folks to help support some of those endeavors. That's a report for another time. What I did want to make mention, and I also wanted to say, forgive me, Mr. Bendel, thank you so much for your time there, although I got to say, it seems like you're really in a rush to get off the committee.
I just want to make sure it's fair for the whole community, you know? We didn't set it up with 2 selectmen, so I'm just trying to play by the rules, but thank you.
You give and you give. I appreciate it. No, sincerely, thank you for your time.
Thank
It
you,
was,
sir.
much appreciated. What I also wanted to make note of this evening was I was a little disappointed that the letters that were written by members of our community articulating their vision or their ideas about the town manager were not really read. Well, they weren't read. And I was disappointed only because I think a lot of folks tune into this broadcast, whether live or recorded, and listen to the content of those letters to help them get a gauge or get a vision for what's going on in the community. Them not being read, certainly not the end of the world. It's public information. And the reason I'm carrying my phone like this is because that's how I found them. They are on the town's website. The agenda for this night's meeting is there, as are all of the documents. So all the letters that were written that you didn't hear tonight, please go read them. They're very well written, very articulate, delivered letters that deserve your attention. So I ask everyone to please go and avail themselves of the information and the letters that were written. Lastly, I just want to put into your hands your consideration that experience matters. And I hope that when you leave and go into your executive session this evening, that you seriously consider whether or not negotiating with the existing town manager and continuing his association as our chief executive officer, or severing that relationship and going and starting an interview process with someone new, which of those better serves our community? To me, it's a no-brainer. Certainly, someone with the experience and with the historical knowledge of what has gone on in this community for 30-something years is well-suited to usher us and to guide us collectively as a community through the myriad of large issues on our radar screen over the course of the next several years. We have a new chair doing a fine job, but I believe sincerely that it makes sense to have someone with a rich experience working with many different chairpersons, working collectively with our new chair. I believe that it makes all the sense in the world to have an experienced town manager in place as we go through the process of building or hoping that we can build new schools, a new fire station potentially, and all the other large investments that are on the radar screen. I don't believe that starting the process of interviewing for a new town manager and bringing someone new into that role at this juncture serves the community. And I just wanted to put that on the table for you to think about, and I hope you carry that message into your deliberations this evening. Thank you all very much.
Thank you. Mr. Eaton. Please.
Good evening, folks. It's been a little bit.
Good evening.
I just wanted to echo Mr. Shampoo's thoughts, and I also wanted to provide a little bit of...
yes, Mr. Eaton,
sorry.
please provide your name and address.
Jonathan Eaton, 18 Lawrence Street. Thank you, Mr. Bendel. How soon we forget.
Thank you for the reminder.
How soon we forget. Is it better if I do this?
Yeah.
Okay. So I had the pleasure of serving this board, obviously, for 3 years. And starting in last October, I was the board's designee as the town entered into what was the MSBA's screening process. The Mass School Building Authority, this board decided unanimously in November 2019 to support submitting 6 SOIs, or statements of interest, for the 6 elementary schools that are in town. The board then finalized and then actually submitted, along with the school committee, those 6 SOIs in April of 2020, which was a month after the pandemic had started. Now, normally the MSBA review process starts really right after the submission period closes, but because of the pandemic, MSBA really delayed their review and actually instituted a new first step where their first reach out to the communities that had submitted SOIs to MSBA. The first question really to them was, are you still interested, or has recent circumstances changed your priorities? So in other words, does Wilmington or other communities, do you still want to go forward with a school building project, or are you too busy putting out other fires? The overwhelming response that MSBA heard from us back in October when the screening process really started was yes, that the Board of Selectmen had unanimously supported submitting those SOIs. And so began really the further discussions with MSBA. There was a whittling down where the MSBA had decided that certain submissions from other communities were not going to proceed with the screening process, and the conversations really took place between October until really just ending last month. Over the course of those discussions, it was myself as the former chair of this body, Mr. Hull, the town manager, Mr. Hooper, the superintendent of public buildings, Dr. Brand, the superintendent of schools, Paul Ruggiero, the assistant superintendent of administration and finance, and Dr. Bryson, the chair of the school committee, who participated in those. During the course of those discussions, and particularly as those discussions wrapped up, it became very clear that Wilmington had a strong submission. And during the last meeting that we ended up having with MSBA, we were informed that the screening committee was going to be recommending to the MSBA Board of Directors, who ultimately make the decision on these things, that Wilmington be invited into MSBA. Now, what the MSBA program does is it provides significant subsidies towards the building of school projects. It's somewhere in the ballpark of 40 to 45% of construction or remodeling or renovation of school buildings. And we don't know what's going to happen with a Wildwood or a new school, but ballpark figures, back of the envelope or back of the napkin type math, it's probably going to be somewhere in the ballpark of $50 to $60 million when this ultimately happens. So 40 to 45%, you're looking at about $25 million that would be coming to the town to construct a new elementary school. That doesn't come from the taxpayers in Wilmington. Yes, it comes from the taxpayers across the Commonwealth, but that's your, I think it's a penny and an eighth of your sales tax that goes towards that. So certainly it is very valuable to be going through the MSBA process. Now, where we are with that and where we just came last month is we were invited into the eligibility period. This is not a feasibility study. This is really just the next first step that the MSBA has. The eligibility period does require within 270 days of, I think, July 1st, that a town meeting vote does happen to support that and progress with it. But again, this is not a feasibility study. What this is you are still very much partnering up with MSBA, and they are not a passive investor. They are very much at the table with you, telling you what you can and can't do as you prepare to do something with our elementary schools. The ultimate vote on whether or not we get a grant, because to date, MSBA has committed $0 towards Wilmington elementary schools. No vote will take place prior to July 1st, 2023, which is more than 2 years away, where they are going to be looking at the town of Wilmington and our stability and whether or not we are considered to be investment worthy as they put their $25 or so million towards a potential new elementary school. Now, it was very clear, again, to me, as we were going through those meetings with the MSBA screening process, that one of the things that stuck out to MSBA was our stability. As other communities were backing down or withdrawing their SOIs because of the fires that the pandemic had put forward, not only did Wilmington have a very strong financial situation, but we also had a Board of Selectmen and a town manager that had always been very supportive of our school department. And a unanimous vote in 2 occasions, in November 2019, just to go forward with the preparation of the SOIs, and in April 2020, just as the pandemic was very new, showed the MSBA and our continued commitment towards pursuing this while the world was changing on a daily basis, that this was something that was very worthy of consideration and inviting into that eligibility period. So I understand you have an executive session that's coming up in a few minutes, so I don't want to take up too much more of that time, and you have very important things to discuss. But I certainly think that this board shouldn't be making any decisions that might risk turning away $25 million or so from the state towards constructing a new elementary school, because if the MSBA decides that things are too shaky in the town of Wilmington, and they do not want to invite us into the grant program, which does happen regularly, then what would happen is the MSBA would instruct the town of Wilmington to withdraw our SOI and then reapply, which wouldn't take place until likely the fall of 2023. So we would be losing 2.5 years from today's date before even applying for grant money from the MSBA for a new elementary school. So I'm no longer on this board and no longer have a decision on this plate, but I would strongly encourage you to consider that because certainly I would not want to be a member of that board if the MSBA ultimately decided to turn us away, because for the 2 years that the town is going to have to be working for working towards a new school with the MSBA if 6 months of those times were spent on a town manager search. So, Mr. Hall, I think you have done a fine job. We may not have always agreed on things, but certainly you're the hardest working individual that I know, and I think that very strongly pursuing many of the capital projects, because it's certainly not just the Wildwood School, but also a senior center and a town hall / school administration building. This next year is far more crucial than any of the three that I served up here in terms of the decisions that this board and the town is going to have to make in shaping its infrastructure. And I think your experience is going to be very valuable moving forward.
Thank you, Mr. Eaton. Any other comments? Mr. Somalia?
Excuse me. Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm not going to take up too much of your time either. I know you're all going to an executive session. Like the two former speakers, I was all...
Name and address, please.
What's that?
State your name and address, please.
Lou Sabaglia, 26 Allen Park Drive.
Thank you.
Wilmington.
Please continue. I didn't want Greg to catch me again.
Like the two prior speakers, I'm also a former member of this board. I did 9 years, 3 terms, 2 years as chair. I know what you're going through. It's not easy. You're new, and I have no question you're going to do fine. I have a couple questions. I thought there was a process in place to talk about a town manager's contract where there was a subcommittee set up of the Board of Selectmen. I could never be on that because I work for the town. But that was, a subcommittee was picked out and they did what they had to do and then come back and brought it to the board. That was just a question I had. And also, I was always under the impression when I was on this board, and I know I did it in good as my heart is, there was no politics in this room. And I feel sometimes there's politics oozing out of this room. Okay, I'm not picking on anybody in particular. I'm just saying that because that's just the way that a lot of it feels. Now, I've been accused of being a part of the good old boy network. Well, if I'm a part of the good old boy network, that men and women that have been here and have volunteered their time for decades and decades, and whether they work for the town or volunteer on a committee for decades, then I'm guilty. I'm a good old boy. But I just think it's extremely disrespectful to just blurt out that we need a new town manager. Well, we have a town manager here, and that's just not the way the process has worked in the past. I don't understand why, you know, and I know you're fairly new too, but I don't understand why you didn't call a former chair or a sitting selectman and say, hey, what's the process? To just bring it out. Those letters were written and put on the agenda to be read at a meeting. And then you just stood up and said you wanted to go into executive session immediately. Those letters should...
That's not what I said.
You did say you wanted to go executive session right away.
I said
But then
executive
those I'm not done,
session,
sir.
7:30.
I'm not done. But those letters were on the agenda to be read into this meeting. I was looking forward to hearing them. I'm not a IT savvy like Mr. Shampoo to do it on my phone, but I was looking forward to, and I just asked one more question. If those letters were bashing Mr. Hull, because I haven't heard anything about the budget increase has been very minimal. I'm pretty sure we had no layoffs during this COVID. I'm pretty sure that just, again, the services obviously were interrupted in the beginning moving forward, but as a town, I think we did pretty good. You know, maybe fortunate that we had a round building to have people do their business at town hall. But I'm pretty sure if those letters were written bashing Mr. Hull, I feel like those would have been read into record. And I just think maybe, all due respect, maybe you should have thought about putting the agenda on or doing the executive session before, I don't know. But that's the way I feel, and that's the way it came across. So when I was on this board, I did 3 elections. Those were politician times, running for an election. Once you're up here on this board, there is no politics. And I don't think that anybody should be making any decisions up here politically motivated, for anybody. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
Just to respond to Mr. Smaglia's comment about procedures. The last meeting, I did mention the procedure as to what took place in the past. When I was chairman of the board, we began by setting up a subcommittee of 2 individuals. At the time, I believe it was former Chairman Eaton and Ed Loud, to start negotiations. And after the negotiations were done, we took a formal vote to reappoint. It's also my understanding that you can do it the other way by taking a formal vote to reappoint and then go into negotiations. I believe it's been done both ways, but that's the way I did it when I was chair. So, just to respond to your question.
Madam Chair, if I just may, I was the one who made the motion about the letters, and to clarify, if they had been bashing Mr. Hull, I still would have made the motion for him not to be the one reading them into the record before we entered into executive session to discuss his contract. No matter what those letters said, positive or negative, I don't think, and I might be wrong, and 3 of you are here to tell me that you would have done it differently. I don't think it's appropriate for someone to have to read in either the pros or cons that are being written about them when they know we're about to enter into executive session to have that very same discussion. I appreciate that people took the time to write those letters, which is why my motion was to put them into the minutes, which is why they're available to the public to read. But I don't think it's appropriate for the person whose job we're discussing to be the one to read those letters into the record, no matter what they say. So I stand by the motion that I made, that they're available, that they're in the minutes, that they're in the record, and that they didn't need to be read by the person we're going to be discussing.
Then why were they on the agenda? They should have been on the agenda.
I don't set the agenda, Mr. Somalia, so I don't know. That's
Well,
why I asked for
once you're in an open
clarification.
meeting, though, those are the rules you have to live by. And to stand up and say, I don't want those letters read, then that doesn't look good for an average citizen like myself. It was.
Well, then,
kind
I'm
of-
sorry that it didn't look good, but I'm explaining, the reason I made the motion is I don't think, if someone else had wanted to read them, great. It's the same, we had an executive session prior to this meeting to discuss union negotiations for various contracts. If those people, those men and women, those personnel had written letters, it would have been the same thing. I don't think it's appropriate in open meeting to have discussions about things that we're going to be discussing in executive session. I appreciate the community's feedback. I'm also aware that there's feedback that wasn't documented thus far. That's not political. That's legitimate concerns. And that's what will be discussed in executive session where it should be.
Madam Chair, the way I read the executive session is that we're going to be discussing preparations for negotiations, which to me says that we're going to be reappointing Mr. Hull. So that's pretty cut and dry there.
Yes.
I'm the one who brought this up originally. Number one, Mr. Slamegria, this is not political. At least in my part, it is not political. It's for the town. I'm just saying, I requested it so we could look and see. And I was denied when I requested a motion for tonight to have it put on the agenda, because legal counsel advised that it wasn't the right thing to do. So me being the novice, I said, okay, he knows more than I do. But I take offense when you make a notion that this is political, and it sounds like the reference was pointed at me.
Point of order, my name was mentioned.
Yes, sir.
Okay, that's just the way it came across, and when you overheard at veterans events talking about certain things, obviously it gets back to me, so I'm not saying that you were politically motivated by what you said, I'm just saying that's the way it came across. I don't know what you're thinking, Mr. De Palma, but I'm just saying that's the way it came across. That's all.
As I said last meeting, if Mr. Hull is the best certified, the most certified to continue on with his job, I applaud it, and we go forward, and we work for the best of the town. And it was an inquiry I had, and then when we were discussing it, all I wanted to make sure is I had a motion for this meeting. And legal counsel advised it was not the right thing to do. So what did I do? I said, okay, let's go forward with it then, like what legal counsel is telling us to do.
I'm just going to interject here, because I think we've had enough of this conversation all around, and this was, legal counsel did advise that we take this into executive session, and I was the one that agreed to do that for this very reason, because I don't think this is a conversation that we should be having in an open forum. I think it's something that we need to have an executive session, and then move forward from there, whether we choose to reappoint or not reappoint, whatever comes out of executive session. So I'd like to move on to see if there's any other public.
Madam Chair, with
Yeah.
all due respect, that's for an open meeting, whether we reappoint or appoint someone.
Right, I'm
Not to-
saying.
Not to make that decision in executive session.
No, I understand that. I didn't mean, that's not what I meant. I meant per our discussions, whatever comes out of that. I am gathering that there's going to be a motion on the next, an agenda item on the next meeting for that purpose.
Because I'm reading the entire executive session description where it says to conduct strategy sessions
Strategy
in
sessions.
preparation.
We're not going in there to.
So that we can actually talk to
That's
legal,
right.
to town council, and we can understand the
That's right.
process. And not to open negotiations
No.
tonight, but to actually understand what the process is that we
That's
should be
correct.
following.
That's right. We're not going into executive session to renegotiate. We're going in to discuss it and
It says
decide.
for preparation, it says a strategy session in preparation for negotiations. So we're going to be strategizing about how we're going to be negotiating his next, Mr. Hull's next contract.
Mr. Rich, would you please, if you don't mind, just explain the title?
Thank you.
Thank you.
To the board, there are limited executive session purposes that are available. The executive session purposes listed on the agenda is strategy with respect to negotiations with non-union personnel. And so there'll be a discussion of what that strategy will be. I don't want to get too far into it because obviously then we're discussing what we're going to be discussing in executive session, but it'll be the opportunity to discuss what the process will be going forward, whether going forward or not. So I just urge caution because at some point we lose the purpose of being in executive session. Then based upon what happens in the executive session, there'll be discussion of an agenda item that will come onto the next agenda for the board's consideration based upon the strategy that's discussed tonight.
Thank you. Any other further discussion on this topic, or can we move forward? Good. All right, we're going to go into announcements. Yes.
If I may, thank you very much. Just as is tradition, I want to congratulate the class of 2021 from both Wilmington High School and Shawshene Tech, who will be graduating very shortly, and so congratulations and best wishes to all of them. I also want to give another final plug to all the great events that are planned for Memorial Day weekend. Our Veteran Service Office has spent a lot of time putting together what I believe will be a very fitting tribute once again, and I hope that there will be a great turnout to honor our veterans. So thank you very much. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Ms. Curran.
Yeah, Madam Chair, echo my colleagues' comments of congratulations to the classes of 2021, and also want to make mention of the dedication that took place on Federal Street, Liberty Street, for the dedication of Edward J. Gillis Corner. It was inspirational, and I commend Lou and his staff for putting that together for that morning event. Also, I'm looking forward to the weekend. It's just a wonderful community event where we get together and, we're putting flags and carnations on those soldiers that fought. And I always like to go to do it on my father's gravesite where he was in World War II. But then the parade. I'm looking forward. To be honest with you, I don't know if I can march. I need a knee replacement, and I have one knee replacement, so I'm going to play that by ear. So, Chief, if you have a vehicle nearby, in case on the way I go down, that would be helpful.
In the back seat.
Yeah, in the back seat, yeah. And the K-9 car, yeah. But I'm sure that the whole community is looking forward to this and going to come out 100%, as they always have, for our veterans. And once again, thank you and your staff for what you do.
So, in keeping with my tradition, Josie O'Mahony's now 11 last week, Danny O'Mahony's now 14. Congratulations to all of the class of 2021, but obviously my most favorite graduate is Patrick O'Mahony, who's going to be going to Bryant in the fall. So lots of fun stuff ahead.
Congratulations.
Wonderful.
one thing, these kids that are graduating have gotten left out because of the pandemic. So let's show them the spirit of Wilmington, and every time we see one, either high-five them, well, excuse me, elbow them, or just congratulate them. It's been as tough as it's been for adults, it's even been tougher for the kids. And I congratulate every single one of them and wish them nothing but happiness and success. And I can't wait for the parade. Mr. Kyra, you've had your knee replaced. I'm having mine done in September. So what we'll do is we'll stand next to each other. So if we go over one side, at least we got two legs out of the four of us.
Break each other's fall. Right?
There you go.
Yeah. All right, great. And I echo those sentiments too, that all my colleagues here said. My son graduated last year, and I thought he missed out on a lot. These poor kids really missed out. I'm just so happy that they've had prom, and they're gonna have in-person graduation. So if we could squish the 2 years together, they'd have the perfect year, you know? So, and I too am looking forward to next weekend as well, so. And moving on to new business. Do we have any new business? Nope, new business. All right. And then important dates.
So under important dates, tomorrow evening, May 25th, is the Town School Admin Building Committee. They will be meeting to conduct 2 interviews on the architect and designer. This will be the second set of interviews. Starts at 6 o'clock p.m., and this is virtual. May 29th, decoration of graves, Wildwood Cemetery, 8 a.m., decoration of parks, squares, and monuments. May 30th is the rededication of parks, squares, and monuments, Wilmington Memorial Library, 12 noon, Police Station Monument, 1 p.m., Memorial Shrine at St. Thomas of Villanova, Veterans Monument at Town Common at 1:15 p.m. May 31 is the Memorial Day Parade, starting at 10 a.m., Memorial Day Ceremony, Wildwood Cemetery, Veterans Lot, 11 a.m. Town offices will be closed on May 31st. June 2nd is the brush drop-off, Old Main Street, 8 a.m. to 2 p.m. June 3rd is the Shawshene Tech graduation. June 5th is a brush drop-off, Old Main Street, 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. June 5th, Fishing Derby, Town Beach, 8 a.m. to 11 a.m. June 6th, the Wilmington High School graduation. June 7th, as was noted earlier, the Municipal Vulnerability Preparedness Plan and Hazard Mitigation Plan listening session, virtual, 4 p.m. June 12th, townwide yard sale, 8 a.m. to 2 p.m. June 12th, Town Beach opens. June 13th, Farmers Market, Swain Green, 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. June 14th, Board of Selectmen's meeting, room 9, 7 p.m. June 15th, Economic Development Committee. June 18th, town offices closed. This is in honor of Juneteenth, Independence Day, which is actually on Saturday, the 19th. June 23rd, Environmental Protection Agency, a virtual session, 6:30 p.m. This is with regard to their recently issued record of decision on the Olin Superfund site. And there'll also be a highlight or a review of the Wilmington Childhood Cancer Study. June 24th is a jazz concert, Swain Green, 6 p.m. June 28th, another Board of Selectmen's meeting, Town Hall, room 9, 7 p.m.
And next, we have salute to service. Mr. Bendel.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It is my distinct honor to read this on behalf of my colleagues. This week's salute to service goes to longtime resident Frank Marchese. He is a United States Air Force veteran that honorably served during the Vietnam War. Frank was discharged with the rank of sergeant from the Barksdale Air Force Base, and after earning the Air Force Good Conduct Medal and the National Defense Service Medal, amongst other awards. Later, Frank served for years as an independent contractor for the United States government and the Department of the Navy as an engineer at the Naval Shipyard Detachment here in Boston. Frank also worked several years as a welder, working at the United States Coast Guard base, also in Boston. In total, Frank worked on nearly 30 to 35 naval ships and submarines. Frank continued serving his community right away and continues to do so today. Frank has donated plenty of his time to the town of Wilmington's nonprofits and school events as DJ of Traveling Sounds. Frank has DJ'd the Wilmington's Fun on the 4th celebration, including a Family Day and Independence Day for over 25 years. Police Beach Day for 20 years, and the Wilmington High School proms and homecoming dances for 15 years, including last week's 2021 senior prom. Frank was instrumental in raising funds to send packages to our brave men and women serving overseas in the military, beginning in 2004 and up until 2019. Frank volunteered his time with local heroes to support our active military. Frank is well known in our town as an all-around great guy and someone who knows how to get the party started. Today, he spends his days with his beloved wife, Betty, of more than 37 years, and he's surrounded by a beautiful family where he serves in his proudest role as Papa. So on behalf of the Board of Selectmen and the citizens of Wilmington, we salute Frank Marchese and thank him for his service to our country and to our community. Madam Chair, I submit this into the record, please.
Yes, please. Okay, that will conclude our agenda items for the open public meeting, and we will now adjourn to executive session.
Motion?
A motion, sorry, a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Not to return to open.
Not to return.
Not to return, sorry. Oh, hold, I have, you know what, I have a whole thing to read, I think. I apologize. Oh, thank you. I had it prepared and didn't read it. Okay, I would enter a motion to enter executive session for the purpose of conducting strategy sessions in preparation for negotiations with non-union personnel, town manager in accordance with Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A2, and further that upon the conclusion of the executive session, the board will adjourn without returning to open session. Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
And a second?
Second.
Okay. Any discussion? And all those in favor? Roll call.
Garrett Palmer, yes.
Joe Maria Mahoney, yes. Sorry.
Greg Bendel, yes.
Kevin Kyrie, yes.
Billy Maselli. Okay.
Members, I would
moved.
just
Yeah.
ask that there's a number of documents for you to sign if you want to do that perhaps before you go into session.
Thank you.
WCTV, connecting our community. WCTV, connecting our community. Wilmington, Massachusetts.